Guys, if you watch a lot of sports card content and see all the success stories of turning $10 into $1,000, it's easy to think that you're the only one that is not messing up and making poor investments from time to time. And that is simply far from the truth. In fact, I have made plenty of poor investments in my first year of sports card investing, but fortunately, every miscalculation I have made has come with an even greater learning lesson. So in this video, I'll show you my 5 biggest mistakes of the year and what I've learned from each one to make sure that I have a much better and more successful 2021, and so will you. So welcome back. Now let's get to work. For the majority of you guys who have not been around for the beginning of my journey back into sports cards, it started back in February when I was listening to Gary Vaynerchuk talk about the resurgence of the hobby.
A lot of people, when they get educated that they can make more money in sports cards than they can in cryptocurrency and cannabis, will run towards your game.
I made $150,000 on LeBron James rookie cards in 4 months. They've gone from $1,000 to $4,000.
Which led me to diving into the hobby and even buying a box of 2019 Donruss basketball with a friend of mine for just $200, which at the time I thought was a lot, and now I realize that's pennies. Soon after that, the big news in sports was that The Last Dance docuseries was being pushed up from June 2020 to April, and with no other sports going on and the hobby really starting to catch fire, I decided I want to invest for it. So I believe that Reggie Miller was the one player that was being overlooked. Everyone was talking about MJ and Pippen and Rodman, but he was a rival of MJ, and the Pacers actually took the Bulls to a Game 7 in those '98 Eastern Conference Finals, and Reggie Miller hit a game-winning 3 in Game 4, which really turned the series around. And because of that, I thought there'd be a lot of attention around that matchup in the docuseries, perhaps in an entire episode even. So I decided to buy a couple of Reggie Miller PSA 9 rookie cards on eBay for about $50 each on average, and then buy up a ton of that card raw on ComC. And I'd already flipped a couple Scottie Pippen rookies pretty successfully for about 2 to 3x what I paid, so I assumed it would be the similar or the same for Reggie as well. Now, unfortunately, there was no hype around Reggie or much attention around that series, and I only sold a couple of those cards, leaving me with about 30 raw Reggie Miller Fleer rookie cards on ComC. But the ironic part is that I did sell both PSA 9s of Reggie for about $150 each on average, almost a 3x return. And the realization for me was this: when a player suddenly enters the spotlight for whatever reason, and you know it's going to be short-lived, I want to have the most liquid card possible, not even the second or third most liquid. In this case, a PSA graded rookie card of Reggie was extremely liquid while the raw card wasn't. The supply and demand ratio of the graded card worked in my favor. The ratio of the raw card did not. I'm also learning this with emerging players. For example, Rui Hachimura is a guy that I was doing some research on and buying up back in September. Now, recently he's gotten some good press from other content creators. Plus, he's now playing with Russell Westbrook, which is bringing some loftier expectations to the Wizards. But the point is that I've sold several Rui Prism rookie cards from this press, but 0 of his Optic or Mosaic rookie cards thus far. The big takeaway for me is that I will only buy the #1 most desirable and liquidable card for that player that has a moment in the spotlight. And when that #1 card gets too pricey because they've sustained their performance for long enough, I will look for the undervalued #2 and #3 option. If not, I may end up like I did with the Reggies, where there's a ton of supply on the raw card and not nearly that level of demand. My second mistake has been buying out of boredom and just justifying it as a good investment. Can anyone relate to that? This is when I just get some extra money in and I'm just looking to park it somewhere and settle for a risky or mediocre opportunity rather than being patient and allowing a lower risk, higher reward opportunity to come by. As I've said in some prior videos, the strategy side of the hobby is what I really enjoy. To me, it's like playing chess. This is where I get to combine my knowledge of sports and human behavior, finances, and cards into one formula and see what happens. And I'm also a very cerebral person, so that type of mental stimulation is a lot of fun for me. And when I can't play that game for whatever reason, I just start stretching just to get that dopamine rush of buying something new. And then I regret it because, of course, what happens is a better opportunity comes along right after. What I've started to do is to allow periods of time where I don't buy at all, and instead I spend that time learning about a new sport or niche in the hobby. That's why I've started diving into baseball and even soccer cards, just to learn the basics and see if there are any easy buy low opportunities of greats like Hall of Famers while not following the sport as intently. Mistake number 3 has been going for the home run too often rather than just taking the double that was ripe for the picking. And to be honest, I have been much better at taking the singles and doubles in recent months, especially after seeing the crash of the card prices in September. A lot of times that thought of, what if this is the next card that spikes all the way up to $1,000? That thought enters my mind, and I have to remind myself that there's always that possibility, but the odds are so far against it. A more sound strategy for me is just going for the double every time and doubling my investment and duplicating this process over and over again while getting smarter with every transaction. One example of when I finally got this right was when I was selling my Rob Gronkowski Chrome PSA 10 rookies. Now, I originally had 6 of them, and I was trickling them out one by one and increasing the price every time just to test the market. And eventually I just had 1 left, and that urge of, what if Gronk comes out on fire and the prices double again entered my mind. And it definitely could have happened, but instead I decided to take a $500 offer and was able to make a great return and roll it over into other investments. And I feel like the bigger lesson was just humility and playing the odds, knowing that I could find the next undervalued card to invest in rather than just risking everything. All right, on to number 4. One of the biggest learning lessons for me this year has been to never underestimate supply, especially on new product. And one set that still intrigues me a ton is Mosaic. Several months ago, I was buying a lot of first-year Mosaic on ComC and eBay because I thought it was really going to take off. And the mistake I made was assuming the hype around Mosaic was going to last like it was already accepted as a staple in the hobby. And I bought plenty of base cards like Luka and Trey and Kawhi in his Clippers jersey, LeBron and AD in their Lakers jersey. And at first, there was only a handful of these cards on ComC, so I thought it was going to somewhat stay that way. But unfortunately, it did not, and the hundreds of base Mosaics flooded the market for less than what I paid. So going forward, I'm gonna look at new sets and product the same way as I do with rookies. I'll account for the volatility a lot more and remind myself that there are thousands of boxes being opened, thousands of cards being sent to be graded, and thousands of cards yet to be uploaded to ComC and to StarStock, or just yet to be listed on eBay. So just remember that new product is like dust being thrown in the wind. Dust in the wind. You gotta wait for it to settle to see clearly. If not, you're gonna make a mistake like I did. Everything is dust in the wind. My 5th and final learning lesson is to stop thinking so small about the cards. I've realized that I still associate myself with the hobby in a similar way to when I was 11 years old, and back then a $50 card was a lot of money. Now we got big time investors and fractional ownership and breakers making a ton of money as well. It's time to shift my paradigm around the hobby because I believe I'd be doing just fine investing in higher end cards, and even if I lose 40% of the time, if I win 60% of the time, I'll be okay. But staying overly conservative without a just reason is more like choosing to live in a state of fear rather than a state of confidence and abundance. And I don't want to get this twisted because I still have got to follow my principles of having a healthy savings account, not using debts, and investing in other things. But in 2021, I really want to make sure that my perceptions around the hobby are accurate to what the hobby is in 2021 versus always thinking so small and staying overly conservative to the point where I'm sabotaging myself. When I think of some of the investments that I wanted to pull the trigger on, like Russell Wilson back in July when everyone was all over Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson, I would have made thousands and thousands of dollars if I was just confident enough in that mindset. And now, almost a year in of just being in the cards, I feel like I'm winning way more than I'm losing. And if I could just add an extra zero, now I could really start paying bills and really moving this forward. And of course, the more I can do that, the more I can share with you and help you in whatever way I can, whether it's just entertainment, if it's financial perspective, if it's something like that. But to play small is not only sabotaging myself, but it's sabotaging this channel and this community, as well as the value I could bring you. And there's a very famous Nelson Mandela quote. I'm gonna butcher it, but it's something along the lines of, there is no honor to be had in living a life playing small, or something like that. But it's just something that I'll take with me next year. Now, those were my biggest mistakes of the year. Now head on over to the Personal Finance Dad's channel, where he goes over how badly he fucked up this year.